The sun was dipping behind the mesas, painting the sky in harsh streaks of orange and crimson when Caleb Munro finally let the reins fall from his horse and surveyed the isolated cabin he'd called home for the last 5 years. The solitude had been a balm, a shield from memories he didn't wish to face, yet tonight the wind carried a strange tension, something unspoken that made the desert feel alive in a way that unsettled him. Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and stale blankets, the remnants of his simple meals scattered across the table. He had been living off the land, tending to his few horses and hunting what game he could find. It was a quiet life, a life he had chosen after tragedy had taken all he had once known. And then a soft, hesitant knock echoed through the wooden walls, cutting through the silence like a knife. He stiffened immediately. Visitors were rare and strangers rarer still in this unforgiving expanse of New Mexico territory. Yet he opened the door, hand resting on the worn rifle he never left far from his side. Standing there was a woman, her dark hair tangled with dust and wind, and her eyes wide, brimming with something he couldn't quite place, fear, defiance, and an almost desperate plea. She was unlike anyone he had seen, and the aura of danger, or perhaps warning, clung to her as tightly as the dirt on her clothes. "Please," she whispered, voice barely audible, don't go in there." Caleb frowned, feeling a strange pull toward her. "Go in where?" he asked, though his tone betrayed curiosity. Her lips trembled. "That's forbidden. Don't touch it." Caleb's brow furrowed. He had seen warnings before, signs etched in wood or whispered by wary neighbors. But the intensity in her eyes, the gravity behind her words, demanded more than casual heed. Something told him this was not mere superstition. Yet instinct gnawed at him. Curiosity mingled with that restless urge he'd carried since he had lost everything. He stepped past her, ignoring her protests, the floorboards groaning beneath his boots. She followed him, hand outstretched but shaking, her words frantic. "I told you, don't!" When he reached the back of the cabin, his eyes fell upon a small, intricately carved chest. The wood was old, the iron hinges rusted, but it radiated something intangible, an almost magnetic weight. Caleb hesitated, one hand brushing over the surface, feeling the grooves beneath his calloused fingers. He had no business opening it, yet something compelled him. He took a deep breath and lifted the lid. Inside lay a collection of letters, folded and yellowed with age. Each one bore delicate, looping script, a mixture of fear and longing pressed into ink. There was a locket as well, and within it a tiny portrait of a young woman whose eyes seemed to pierce into his soul. Caleb's heart thudded. He could feel it in his chest like a hammer. The cabin seemed to grow smaller, the air thick with tension and anticipation. "Stop!" she hissed, stepping closer, her hand finally touching his arm. "You have no idea what that holds." Caleb turned to her, seeing fear and something more, something he couldn't define, something almost sacred in its intensity. Yet the urge to know, to understand, overpowered caution. He lifted one letter, reading aloud softly, "To whomever finds this, my life has been wronged, my trust betrayed." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. They will come for it. If anyone sees it outside this room, it will bring nothing but death." Caleb's brows knitted in concern. "Who are they? What is this?" She took a step back, her frame trembling. "I am the guardian of this, of her story. She is gone, but they will not rest until her secrets are buried forever. And now you've seen what was never meant to be seen." Something about the gravity of her words made him pause. His own life had been full of unspoken tragedies, and he recognized the weight of history pressing down on this woman. He lowered the letters slowly, meeting her gaze. "Then I guess we have to keep it safe," he said softly. Her lips parted in a whisper of disbelief. You would risk it? Risk yourself?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I've been running from ghosts all my life. Maybe it's time I stood for something that matters." For a moment, Silence stretched, broken only by the wind whistling through the cracks in the cabin walls. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a sound fragile, hesitant, but utterly human. It was the first smile she had shown him, a smile that spoke of trust, reluctantly offered, and yet a trust that could be shattered with a single misstep. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "The moment anyone knows that chest has been touched by anyone, they will come, and they will not ask." Caleb nodded, setting the letters back in the chest and closing the lid with careful reverence. "Then we guard it together." Her gaze softened, but there was still fear in her eyes. You shouldn't have done what you did." "I know," Caleb said, placing a hand over hers, "but sometimes doing what's forbidden is the only way to set things right." Night descended outside, the desert dark and alive with nocturnal whispers. The cabin was small, but within its walls a fragile alliance had formed, one born of curiosity, courage, and the unspoken knowledge that both had faced a world too cruel to live without secrets. Caleb felt something stir within him, a spark he had thought long extinguished. He had come west to escape, to bury his past, yet tonight he had stumbled upon a life that demanded his protection, a story that demanded courage, and a woman whose presence forced him to confront the very essence of his own heart. Hours passed. The wind rose and fell, and the stars above seemed to watch silently. Caleb and the woman moved carefully through the cabin, ensuring the letters were secure. The night was a battleground of restraint and choice, each step a risk, yet neither faltered. By dawn, they were exhausted, bodies and minds pushed to their limits, yet a subtle connection had been forged. A recognition of shared humanity, the fragile power of trust, and the unspoken promise to protect something precious at all costs. Caleb gazed at the horizon, thinking of the life he had chosen, and for the first time he wondered if perhaps some rules were meant to be broken, some forbidden doors meant to be opened, not for gain, but for honor and for love. In that moment, he realized that the unthinkable he had done was not a betrayal, it was redemption. And sometimes in the harsh, unforgiving West, doing the wrong thing in the right way was the only way to survive, and perhaps even to heal. The woman watched him, eyes full of caution and something else, a quiet gratitude that softened the tension between them. Caleb smiled faintly, the weight of the night pressing against his chest, but also lifting, as if the act of daring the forbidden had set something free for both of them. Outside, the wind carried away the last echoes of fear, leaving only the possibility of trust, courage, and perhaps even love. And in the heart of the desert, with the sun rising over the distant mesas, two souls, bound by the unthinkable, stood ready to face whatever the world had left for them, together.